Welcome to Transformative Principle, where I help you stop putting out fires and start leading. I'm your host, Jethro Jones. You can follow me on Twitter at Jethro Jones. Welcome to Transformative Principle, a proud member of the B Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jethro Jones. On the B Podcast Network, we've got a show for every role in education. And if we don't have one for your role, let me know and let's make one. That would be awesome. You can learn more about all of our shows at bpodcast.network. Today on the show, we have Taylor Davis, and after completing college, Taylor embarked on a professional journey as an account executive in marketing and sales, but she realized something, inspired by the wisdom of her dad, a dedicated teacher administrator, that she had a true passion in working with children. This led Taylor back to school to pursue a master's degree and transition into a fulfilling career as an educator. The initial teaching years were spent in Georgia, where she dedicated 3 years to shaping young minds. Subsequently, a return to the home state of Washington extended her teaching career for an additional 6 years. And during this time, the desire to make a broader impact on a larger scale ignited, which you'll notice is a theme with her, prompting Taylor, with the support of her father, to pursue administrative credentials. That culminated in a role as an elementary associate principal in the Lake Washington School District, where she has dedicated the last 9 years. Throughout this period, Taylor encountered the challenges and triumphs of education, navigating the pandemic like everyone else, alongside a myriad of high-need situations within the school environment, including addressing behavioral concerns, trauma, and supporting low-income students and families. Taylor found herself in a leadership role twice within 7 years, unexpectedly managing the responsibilities of the school due to principals being placed on administrative leave in the middle of the year. Beyond the professional challenges, Taylor faced personal struggles, coping with an abusive relationship while being a new mom, the difficulty of concealing this trauma within the school context where the same authorities were involved led Taylor to prioritize professional needs until it became untenable. The onset of the pandemic coincided with a high-conflict divorce from a narcissistic partner extending over 4 years, and despite these personal challenges, Taylor remained a committed principal and full-time single mom to a now kindergartner in her school. This unique blend of professional and personal experiences has given Taylor a distinctive perspective, particularly in understanding the complexities that families and students face, especially those dealing with trauma or poverty. Having emerged on the other side of personal trauma, Taylor is now ready to channel her healing journey into helping others, desiring to utilize her voice for a greater purpose. Taylor's exploring ways to contribute meaningfully, driven by a sense that there is more she can do to make a positive impact. And just in the short time I have known her, I have seen that positive impact on me personally as well. So Taylor, thanks so much for being part of Transformative Principle today, and welcome.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
So from our conversation to you, what is the takeaway you want people to get?
I'd say that the work that I've been doing with you in our pod has been fantastic, because I've really learned how the saboteurs are not only good for professional development, but for personal development as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think that is incredibly powerful. And that's actually something that I've leaned into as a coach, where I was really focused on professional development. And what I'm really trying to do now is focus on personal development, and that this is not just about helping you be a better principal, but it's helping you be a better parent, a better spouse, a better child, a better leader, and it's helping you develop in all those different areas. And that's really what I'm trying to do a better job of myself, is recognizing that it's not just about improving each individual's professional life, but improving their overall life as well. And let me just tell you, that is so much more fulfilling than just improving your professional life. And I felt like before I needed to just focus on the professional life because I didn't have the qualifications to help in other areas. And I'm certainly not a therapist, but I am someone who loves people, and that matters a lot when it comes to personal and professional development. And so that's an aspect of me coming out of my own shell and really leaning into my sage as well, because I personally see every person as a son or daughter of God. And it doesn't matter if they believe that or not. What matters is that I see them as that son or daughter of God, and I see their potential, and I want to bring that out of them as much as I can. Excuse me. I think the other thing that I would say was really valuable from our conversation is that you talked about how this is helping you in your life as well, and that it's not just the professional development, but it's also personal development. But you gave a few examples of like what it's actually doing and how it's helping you, and I just think that that is really powerful. So definitely a great conversation. If you're listening to this and you're like, what are these saboteurs, what is all this stuff that they're talking about, in the show notes, if you just want to hop on a call with me and do a free coaching call, which is how Taylor and I essentially started, we'll talk about that in just a second, we can go ahead and do that. In the show notes, just click on the link that says to schedule a free coaching call, and we can do that. And I'd love to take some time and give you some support. No strings attached, nothing like that. Just want to give you an opportunity to see what this feels like and see what the experience is. And hopefully it's beneficial and I can help you solve one little problem in your life right now. We will get to our interview here with Taylor in just a moment. So, Taylor, will you start by just telling us what made you want to do this coaching program with me?
Yes. Well, first off, I met you in a conference setting.
Mm-hmm.
So it was an associate principal conference, and you were the kind of headliner, if you will. And we talked a lot about saboteurs, and just I found it interesting to dive a little deeper into that language. You take a lot of these personality tests as a leader, and especially as you go through administration and you're trying to figure out who your staff is, how do you work with your staff, and just individuals that you come across, right? And how to become an effective leader, and what your leadership style is, and how you can maximize your human capital and all of that fun stuff, right? But I never really looked at it from the lens of the saboteur perspective. And so it was a new perspective for me, and leaning into that and really connecting to a lot of the story mindset shifts that you were discussing during this 2-day workshop had me on the edge of my seat. And I'm at this point where I've been an associate principal for, this is my 9th year, and I'm at this shift of there's something I need to be doing more of. I don't know exactly what that is yet, but I want to be leveling up, if you will. I want to do more to help people. I want to extend my personal, my professional development in a way that is more impactful, in a positive way. I just don't know which direction that's really leaning in, but I want it to be a direction that is going to, like I said, I guess, make an impact, right? But I needed guidance on figuring out which direction to go. And I think leaning into what my saboteurs are and what personality traits I'm leaning into as a leader, and really honing in on how I'm using some of these traits and these saboteurs is going to help me identify the path I need to take to get where I eventually do want to go, and identify which path I want to get to. So that's ultimately where, at the end of our conference and looking at opportunities to continue doing some work with you and leaning into that free coaching call of, hey, let's dive deep, and just the questions that you asked, like, come with a problem of practice. And you got me on a hot day. It was a problem of practice. It was, and that's what you hope for, right? You don't want to come in with something fluffy, because that's not realistic, because in this position, there's always a problem of practice. But are you going to be genuinely honest about what that problem is and how you want to navigate through it? Because if you're not going to be honest with yourself, you're never going to get to where you want to be. And I'm at this point where I'm not going to gloss over it and paint this pretty picture of, well, I'll figure it out. No, I actually want to figure it out, and I want to move past it with preserving everybody's dignity and professionalism around me. But I want to also engage in growth conversations for not only myself, but for those that I'm working with, and for the benefit of impacting kids, right? That's the business I'm in. And so having those questions in that conversation of, okay, tell me more. Tell me more. How is your saboteur playing into this? How are they showing up? In just kind of digging deeper. And so I think it was just a natural shift of growing into this course. And I say growing into this course because that's what I'm doing. You learn every single week what your saboteur is and getting a little bit deeper into that.
Yeah.
And learning about your judge, which is
Yeah.
a great thing to learn about because we all have one.
We sure do.
But how do you use it to guide those experiences that you're in?
Yeah. So that's all really powerful. Can you talk a little bit about the one free coaching session that we did together? Because I think that that is also instructive in helping people see, like, we had done that. I was there, we met in person, but it wasn't like I was really, working with you one on one in that session. But then when we had the free coaching call later, that's where I was working directly with you and I got to know your situation a little bit better. How did that help you make the decision? You mentioned the questions that I asked before, but tell me more about that and what thought process you were going through that said, okay, I need more of this. I need this 6-week program that Jethro does, and I think it's going to be absolutely worth it. What made you think that?
I think what really helped me shift into the perspective I need more of these conversations is it kept me from a position of being complacent and just sitting in it and being and like admiring the problem. I don't want to admire the problem. I want to actually move through it and fix it and get to the other side. And this was a situation where it was a conversation with a staff member and trying to it worked out with a couple of my saboteurs of the high achiever, the people pleaser, that type of thing, which are two of my top saboteurs, and leaning into how they were really working in that situation of, well, I expect people to do their job, but I also want to make sure, okay, I'm leaning into what they should be doing, and I want to make sure that, all right, I'll give them a free pass or whatever it is, but I'm gonna do it at the result of me kind of internally taking it in, if you will. But I think what that conversation with you did for me was continually pushing at getting deeper into the root cause of the problem of practice and not just sitting at the high level, just admiring it from that 30,000-foot view, just really kind of isolating it down further and breaking it down into smaller parts to see it from different angles and different perspectives and to see where those different saboteurs showed up within that problem of practice, because it's not just one at a time necessarily. They can dance along the same lines, but in different sections of the problem, and to see how they're playing within that situation and how you can utilize them to kind of get yourself out of that situation and flip the script, if you will. And kind of like I always like in my head is that flipping this OODA loop, like what's the typical response that you would always have. And so the questions that you would ask me were just trying to flip that OODA loop for me and just dig deeper. And you were asking tough questions, pressing me harder and getting me to think deeper, which is something that I needed, instead of just saying, okay, great, sounds like you figured it out, or oh yeah, that's a bummer,
Yeah.
and then just kind of moved on with it. You actually just kept pressing because you wanted to help me figure it out too.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things that I think is real powerful there is, and just real quick, the OODA loop is the observe, orient, decide, act, which is something that they use to train fighter pilots on how to make decisions. So that's in case you that just rolls off your tongue, Taylor, but not everybody may know about that. So I want to make sure people hear about that. But I think one of the things that's really powerful about what you're saying here is that while you're saying things like I kept pushing and drilling down, the reality is that really I was helping you see the way that you were stopping yourself from being the best version of Taylor that you could be. And that's really the intention that I went into it with, that when I do those free coaching calls, that's what I'm trying to get you to see is where your own saboteurs are preventing you from being as successful as you really want to be, because that's really what they do is they prevent us from being successful. That being said, though, your saboteurs have also been instrumental in you getting to where you're at today. And so it's this difficult dichotomy of sometimes they are beneficial, sometimes they are not beneficial. And where we really want to get to is operating from the sage perspective, which is that everything is a gift or an opportunity, and everything can be a positive thing. And then operating at a place from creativity and power and support and all that. Now, if this saboteur language is confused, you don't know what we're talking about, you can go back to episode 575, where I'm interviewed about the saboteurs, and I kind of go into the big ideas around it. And then if you're listening to this and you're like, hey, that free coaching call sounds pretty good, I kind of want some of that myself, in the show notes, there's a link for you to be able to get that free coaching call as well, because I know how powerful it is and I know how difficult it can be to not have the opportunity to take advantage of that. So that's something that's out there for you. If you're interested, I'd love to help you out and help you with that. Taylor, let's come back to you. You've been in the program for a couple of weeks now, and we are currently at the part in the program where it's really easy to be depressed about your life and the decisions that you've made and feel very judgy about yourself. How has this program helped you, even though you might be in even more of a dark place right now than you were before?
Yeah, throw the holidays on there too,
Yeah,
right?
no kidding, right?
um, it can be tricky. I think prior to doing this program, I have done some work with some meditation just personally, and so I think coming in with a little bit of that background has kind of helped remind me of that, setting the stage for myself a little bit and of stabilizing my mental capacity in a sense. But this has really helped in this really busy time, because this is that season where we're in the holiday, teachers are getting stressed out, kids' schedules are getting crazy, family schedules are getting crazy, behaviors are going nuts. Things are out of the norm in school typically. Grades are going to start coming due here in the next couple, month or so after a long break. So it's things are out of the norm. Kids are in interesting spots, and teachers are, kind of at their limits as well. And so I think right now it's kind of the who's coming at me? Hey, do you have a minute? Hey, do you have a minute? And that's what's standing at my door oftentimes. So reminding myself going through the program right now and having those moments of, okay, it's time for a PQ break. I can have people walking by, but I'm purposefully reminding myself I need to take 2 minutes to take a breather. And it really has made a difference to help me reset myself. Or if I'm going into a training where I did some restorative practice training that was pretty anxious to do with my staff, because it's been kind of heavy, tense training the last couple of months with staff, and very purposeful training that we need to continue this work. And I just remember going through that thinking, before I walk into that room, I want to do a PQ rep because I want to go in calm and cool and collected. So I'm in the right headspace, because what I'm going to model for my staff is that I'm ready for this learning. And for me, that was such a difference to go in with that mindset than the training prior, when I didn't have that shift of thinking. I feel like staff was more engaged and receptive to what I was actually sharing with them and providing them with that information, which was a great thing. But I think as I'm going in, and we did a lot of talking about our judge, and it was a heavy training last week and our community chat and just some of our conversations in our little pod chat last week, they were some heavy conversations. And that was, I think, where most of the meaningful work for me came out of, is just, we are all in this work together. You are not alone. You're not isolated doing this work. A lot of us are in different parts of the country doing this work together, but we're all in this together. And it's nice to know that you have a community of individuals that see this work as important as it is, and that can get the value learning about our saboteurs and how it can connect to our personal and our professional life, and how it can really identify those areas of how does it limit us, but how does it also benefit us, even when it is a really stressful period of time. And I think one of the most important lessons so far that I've learned is we shouldn't be doing this when things are easy. We should be doing this when it is a stressful period of time, because that's when we need to practice these skills. That is the most important time to practice these skills, because of course, if we're sitting, like the example, if we're sitting on a beach doing all of this stuff, it's going to be so easy to meditate when you're on a beach hearing those ocean waves. But if you've got 5 kids in the office and 2 teachers coming knocking on your door, are you ready to kind of like reset your thinking in that moment? How can you shift yourself
Yeah.
in that moment to kind of switch gears when there's 3 different things going on?
Yeah, Taylor, I'm so glad you said that, because it really does matter that you do this, that you do it when you need it, not when you're
Mm-hmm.
stress free, not when you're relaxing, not when everything's fine and I can finally devote time to this. The real benefit happens when you are already stressed and struggling with things, and do it during that time, because that's probably going to be your life most of the time. And if your life is not stressful and chaotic, then you're probably not living up to your potential either, right? And so, like, it is okay for you to take this on even when it feels like I've got too much going on. And I just think that you recognizing that so early on is incredibly powerful. And I really admire you for that. Now, I talked a little bit in introducing you about some of the trauma and difficult things that you've been through. And to be clear, I am not a therapist and I don't try to be one. And I talk all the time in the trauma trainings that I do provide that teachers should not be therapists either. And there's a difference between therapy and coaching. And you've gone through some difficult stuff. How is this helping you through the difficult things in your personal life as you're struggling through it all? And, you know, we can edit this out if you like don't want to talk about it all, but I'll let you decide how much you want to share and how you want to manage that. But I think you have a valuable perspective that people can hear, because for some people it's got to be therapy. For other people, therapy actually hinders the process, and no therapist likes it when I say that, but really you got to do what works for you. So just share how this is helping you deal with some of those challenging things that are going on in your life.
Sure. I am not someone who's shied away from therapy. I think it can be a healthy thing personally. I needed to, check in with a therapist here and there, just from some traumatic experiences, in my personal life as well. And I think that, this is a tough season personally. And I've been through some professional tough seasons as an administrator, where I've had, in one building alone, I've been an associate principal for 9 years. In one building, 7 of those years, I've had 2 principals kind of suddenly pulled out of the building, where one looked at me on a Tuesday morning at 10, said, "I'm taking the lizard with me." And I was like, "Wait, what?" So, okay, here we go. And, at the time, it was 800 kids and over 70 staff members I'm managing. And that was a high trauma building. And at the time, I was dealing with some personal trauma as a new mom, dealing with trauma in that kind of sense. So I can connect with a lot of the families with some of their experiences. But I think when I'm looking at this particular professional development, but I mean, I really connect this a lot to personal development too, because I personally can't say that this is just professional development, because I think education is working with humans. We are dealing with humans, and if we are not bringing a human side to working with education in children and the adults that we work with, then we're in the wrong business, period. So if we can't identify where our personal identities lie and who we are and how we show up, good, bad, or ugly, whatever moment that might be. But if we can't identify that, we can't show up and be there for these kids that show up every day, because that's who we need to show up for. And oftentimes, they're the ones that got my feet on the floor every single morning when I had a hard time wanting to come to work every day. Not because I didn't like the work, just because life was hard in the moment. And so when I think about this particular training, and I mean, this holiday was tough. This was the first holiday without my son, because he was with his dad and he didn't want to be with his dad. And it was hard. And in fact, I just finally saw him an hour and a half ago for the first time. And he didn't want to go to class. And he's in my building. Thank God. That's the blessing right now. And he's a kindergartner. So it's like, it's hard to tell him, hey, you've got to go to school, but I understand that you want to hang out with me in my office today, because guess what? I want to hang out with you too. But you've got a job, I've got a job to do. But I knew coming into today, I did a 12-minute PQ, because I'm like, I need to set my day up. Personally, I need to prepare myself to be here, not just for him, not just for me as the mom, but as the administrator in the building as well, and for the staff and the kids that are coming into the building as well. Because he's not the only kid that probably had a hard Thanksgiving break. And I'm not the only staff member that probably had a hard Thanksgiving break. And so coming in with the realization that there are some things that align with this professional development that really are very personal, that can assist in that, makes it so human and so real, that I think just benefits the whole person. And I can connect with so much of it. It really is just kind of this balance back and forth. But I find myself taking a lot of deep breaths.
Yeah, a lot of deep breaths. Lots of rubbing your fingers together, wiggling your toes, definitely.
And I use that with kids now. The kids that are having a hard time dysregulating or regulating from a dysregulated moment. Okay, take your fingers. Let's try this. Rub your fingers together.
Yeah.
Let's take a minute.
Yeah, it's very powerful. I love your story of seeing your son, not seeing him all weekend over the long Thanksgiving break, and then the first time you see him is at school, and like, this is totally natural, but having that feeling of, what if he doesn't show up today? Like, how awful that would be, for a myriad of reasons. Even if like the car broke down and he's just late, like, that would have just sent you through the roof because of your background and experience and all that kind of stuff. And I just think that, like, you being self-aware and knowing, this is what I need to do to be prepared for today, when I can't wait to see my son and just want to spend all day with him, because I didn't get to spend the whole weekend with him. A lot of parents are like, man, my kids were home and I can't wait to send them back to school because can't wait to get them out of my house. Like, that's, both of those things can and are real. And you're setting yourself up to be successful in your personal life, in your relationship with your son, in your professional life as an administrator in the building. And I just think that is so incredibly cool, and such a great place to end this conversation. If you're interested in this kind of coaching, I would love to work with you. You can go to jethrojones.com/coach and sign up to work with me there. I am starting a new cohort in just a few days when this comes out, and so you'll be able to join in with that, and I would love to have you in there also. Taylor, thank you so much for being part of Transformative Principal today.
Yeah, thank you so much.